So I'm sitting here drinking coffee. I just came in from walking the dog, and I thought I need something to drink while I'm on this episode. So I make coffee, and I've loved coffee ever since I was a very little boy. And my grandmother, who was from way out in the country, gave it to me with lots of cream and sugar. She tried that same stunt on my mother when my mother was a little girl. And she hated coffee. For the rest of her life, she described how that one drink of coffee when she was 5 or 6 years old just made her so sick she never wanted to touch it again. So I think coffee is one of those things you either love or you hate. I haven't found too many people who are sort of on the fence about coffee.
You know, Holland, as you say that, I would have to agree. I don't know if there are too many people who are on the fence with this. My personal journey into coffee did not happen till much later. I never liked coffee. The smell of coffee was okay, but not until I was later on in life did I learn to love coffee, but I've probably ruined it as we are getting ready to talk about coffee with my extra syrups and hot milk and all that kind of stuff. But now I have to have it. I mean, I literally will get headaches if I don't have coffee each day. So that's probably not a good thing, but I really just enjoy it. There's something comforting and familiar about this morning ritual. And I just enjoy this beverage.
Well, there's more to think about coffee than whether you like it or not. There's a lot to consider from growers and economies and the people in the cafes. And we want to talk about what the stories are that are brewing on the back burner behind the coffee.
Hi, I'm Holland Webb.
Hi, I'm Amy Boland.
And you're listening to The Afterword, a conversation about the future of words.
So tonight we welcome Bryan Miller, the general manager and head barista from Piecewise Coffee. Bryan, what's up with you?
Nothing actually. I just got off my shift. We're closing the shop up today, and I zoomed home to try to get here on time, and somehow I made it on time. So,
well, welcome.
That's exciting. Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much. And rounding out our coffee table tonight at the Afterword is Brittany Koester. Now, Brittany, I may not be saying your name right. You'll have to excuse me. She is the owner.
No, you said Koester, so that's right.
Okay. So she is the owner of Azalea Coffee Bar, and we welcome both of you. So excited. What's busy in your world of coffee tonight?
Tonight I am just super excited that we're starting construction on our new coffee shop on Monday. So getting ready for that. And I've been looking at new equipment and those sort of things all day. So it's just a lot of moving around here.
Very good. Very good. Well, we're so glad that both of you are here.
So we'd like to know who we're talking to. In just 60 seconds each, would you mind sharing the Cliff's Notes version of your life and who you are? We'll start with you, Bryan, and then Brittany.
Yeah, definitely. Well, my name's Bryan. I'm 26. I started in coffee back when I was probably about like 20-ish. I started working at Starbucks. I think most people who are in coffee start working at Starbucks before they move into a, specialty coffee position or anything like that. And I've kind of been able to do all sides of the coffee industry. I was a coffee roaster for about 2 years as well in North Carolina. The guy who taught me how to roast, he was a master roaster from Honduras. His family owned several coffee farms. And things like that. So I've been able to touch every aspect of coffee, from the green coffee, the buying, the getting the chance to talk to growers and sellers and stuff like that. And it's something that I want to do. I think like opening up a roastery is something that's it's been on my radar for a long time, but that's kind of the dream. So
awesome. Well, I have a very different history with coffee. I started my business, my mobile bar business, 72 Company, without having any background in coffee. So I had never even worked in a coffee shop, not even a Starbucks. And so I just kind of loved coffee. I grew up drinking it, maybe not as young as 5, as I think so Holland had said, but I've always loved it. So I just sort of ran with it. But I'm live in Columbia, in downtown Columbia, with my wife, and we're expecting our first baby. So a lot of things are changing around here, opening a new coffee shop and having a baby all at one time. But I love Columbia, love coffee, and I'm excited to finally own my own shop.
Wow, that's a lot going on. And for both of you,
Yeah.
I'm so excited to jump into this episode as we talk about how this story of coffee, how it connects people, and what are the stories behind the bean. So before we jump into this episode, we really want to help everybody understand who may not have the rich history that Bryan does and I really appreciate, Bryan, what you said, that you know all aspects of coffee. So jump in. It doesn't matter whoever wants to take this. Maybe both of you want to take a shot at these definitions. But we'd like to have a little bit more clarity on some words for some of us more novice coffee aficionados. So let's start first of all with this word, this idea of single origin. Somebody give us an understanding of that.
Single origin, from my understanding, is that a coffee that comes from one single place. So, for example, we have an espresso blend that uses a coffee from Honduras, Peru, and Mexico. So that's more of a blend. But then if we just serve a brew that's just from Peru, that's a single origin coffee.
Yep, she's exactly right. Most of the time, whenever you're serving a single origin coffee, you can trace it back to where it was grown, and then you can trace it to the farmer, all of that kind of other stuff. Most of the time, whenever you get a coffee, like in a bag or something from a specialty coffee shop, even Starbucks, you can get a single origin coffee. It's basically, you can just trace it right back to where it was grown. So,
what would be the advantage of that single origin coffee, Bryan?
Well, most of the time, it really depends on taste. A lot of blends are used in just kind of like, not necessarily, you won't be able to taste all the nuances of the coffee. A lot of people who are coffee freaks like myself, I prefer to go for lighter roasted single origin coffees because I'm able to taste more of the coffee notes. If you get something like a blend, it's a little bit harder to pick out those nuances. Pulling from single origin coffees, it's just the seeking of a better cup of coffee.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So now you've just tapped into our next word, which is roast. And we know that at least many people may be able to relate to dark, medium, or blonde or light roast. Give us a clarity on what that means.
Yeah, I can take over this one just because I'm very familiar with the roasting process. I've burnt my fair share of coffees before. So, so whenever you're roasting a coffee, a lot of people's methods of roasting are different. You can do like a coffee roaster over an open flame. There are some coffee shops that have roasters that are capable of, like oak roasted coffee. The one that I was familiar with, it would just use the natural gas line. So it was able to turn the coffee at a certain temperature, like at a steady temperature for over about like 12 minutes. And then the dark roast normally, the roast profiles, I guess you could say, is how long they're roasted for in that certain temperature and time frame. So a dark roast is going to be roasted a little bit longer than a medium roast, and then a light roast is going to be roasted for a less time than like a medium and a dark roast. So,
all right, very good. Brittany, you got anything else to share on that one?
No, I think like Bryan said, most of us who really like coffee prefer a lighter to a medium roast, which is always funny because people come up who maybe aren't big coffee drinkers. They always want a dark roast. And I think there's some misconception that maybe a darker roast is like a stronger coffee, maybe in caffeine level or something, but it's actually not the case at all. And it sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bryan, but it picks up some of the taste of the actual roaster and less of like the coffee notes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
That's exactly right. So whenever a coffee is left in the roaster for a longer period of time, it actually the process that happens inside of the coffee, like on the molecular level, it like some of the caffeine disperses from the coffee. So lighter roasted coffee is going to have a lot more caffeine than say a darker roasted coffee would, and you're able to pick out more flavors because it wasn't as it wasn't in the roaster as long.
Okay. I'm so loving this already, Holland. Getting so educated now that I know what I'm looking for. And I think Brittany hit it with some of these misconceptions. Sometimes we do think the darker something is, the stronger it is. So this is a great start to our conversation. How about the word brew? Because Brittany, I did hear you mention it a little bit, but what do we mean when we talk about coffee and brew?
For me, at least, brew is just that process of, water and coffee and extraction. So it can be an automatic brewer, which is what, a lot of coffee shops will have. They'll call it like a batch brew or drip coffee, or a pour over is a method to brew. So it's, in my mind, it's whenever that water is meeting coffee and there's something that's extracted. And that lovely liquid that we all enjoy.
Excellent. Bryan, any other details on that one?
No, she hit it right on the head. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
As soon as it's that precious bean water that we all can't live without.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. Bean water. That's great. All right. Our last word before we move on is fair trade. Talk to us a little bit about what this means.
I would love to. This is something that I'm actually passionate about. So fair trade is kind of the process of like getting a coffee from a farm and able to trace it back to the farmer, like a direct line. You can say, I bought this coffee and I know where the money is eventually going to go. There's some kind of misconceptions about fair trade as well. It can pass through a lot of middlemen to meet the fair trade requirements. So it can pass through, 6 or 7 different people to get the coffee to you. And all of them have to take a cut of that profit or that, the price that you paid for the coffee. So for me, I like, in terms of sustainability, in terms of being able to pay the farmers what they've earned, like the direct trade process is a lot more economically friendly for the farmers and environmentally friendly as well, because there's not a lot of moving parts. It's like, exactly which farmer it was. And that's like buying directly from them through a single coffee provider. So.
Excellent. Anything else you want to add to that, Brittany?
No, I think that's perfect. Yeah, it's they're looking at, in terms of fair trade, they're being conscious of the environment, and focused on paying producers what they're worth, because there's a lot of issues in coffee with that. But also I've seen some stuff about trying to limit, child labor and those sort of things. So exactly where your coffee is coming from and that the people that are producing it are getting paid what they deserve to be paid. So
wonderful. I think this just helps us put a framework around this conversation so that we can have a point of reference as we move forward through our cups of coffee. So thank you all for helping us understand some of these words.
So what's a personal story about what made you want to devote your career to coffee? Brittany, why don't we start with you and find out what you have?
Sure. So I went to school for political science. I had it in my head that I was going to be an attorney, or I was going to work in policy, even went and got a master's in the area. But when I'm 30 years old, so 4 years ago, my mom passed away from cancer. And it really, when you lose someone that's important to you, it just kind of wakes you up and you realize I should be doing something that I'm truly passionate about. And so, like I said earlier, I'd never worked in a coffee shop at all. But I never thought I would, but I just started thinking about things I love, and coffee is the best part of my day. I look forward to it every morning. I enjoy it so much. And so I just kind of ran with it. And the more I've been involved, the more I've learned. I'm learning so much from Bryan right now, just listening to him talk about the process of roasting. And so I just wanted to be involved in something that I truly was passionate about.
Thanks for sharing that, Brian.
Yeah.
What's your personal story?
Man, I think back like 2017, I started working at this coffee roastery called 5 Star Coffee Roasters, and the guy that taught me how to roast, his name is Nelson, and he was talking to me about just like his farms and like his family farms, and being able to, trace the coffee back to a specific like a specific region, a specific person. And there's a single origin that we used to roast. It was called Qual Bicicleta. And it was about, the name came from a guy who had his life turned upside down. Like basically everything in his life was going wrong. And I don't remember all of the minor details, but the part that stuck out to me the most was just that, the Qual Bicicleta is just like, you ride the bike, you keep pedaling, you keep moving forward through all of that. And no matter what your life looks like, you just keep going and keep pedaling. And when I learned more about the process and the way that coffee can impact, so many different people on a daily basis, that it was just kind of like, centering my career around that. I just thought that would be cool, and I want to open up a cafe. I want to have a coffee roastery one day, but getting all the experience that I can is kind of the goal for now. But yeah, it's just something that stuck with me.
That's great. I like hearing stories like that, because it lets you know that it's more than just somebody sat down and said, coffee sounds cool, I'll jump into that. Now there's like a reason, right, that we get into the things we do and that we love the things that we do. So thanks for sharing that, both of you.
And we are going to dig a little deeper into some history. Apparently, there's this Ethiopian legend that gives some backstory as to why coffee became this globally transforming beverage. Some farmers were watching their goats eat these berries from a tree, and then these goats could not sleep at night. They shared this information with local monks, who started to brew this bean water, as now I have a new term to call it. And they were able to stay more fully alert during prayers. And that led to cafes, philosophy, newspapers, discoveries, because we know anyone who drinks this liquid has energy from the caffeine. So, Brian, I'll start with you first, and then we'll switch to Brittany. What are some other benefits from drinking coffee?
Oh, I mean, in terms of like health benefits, or just like,
Either one. Pick one. It's fine. Whatever benefits you think.
Well, I mean, for me, I think it's grounding. It's kind of like something that when I wake up in the morning, I have that part of my routine is where I wake up, I will brew a cup of coffee, whether I'm at work or whether I'm at my house, my day off. I'll always start my day with a cup of coffee. It's something that's just kind of grounds me and gets me ready for the day. So it's like that routine of having that drink in your hand. And it's like, I don't know personally all the health benefits. I mean, I know it's not anything in excess is bad for you, but I mean, I've had my fair share of days when I've drunk, something like that. I drank way too much coffee, and I definitely can feel it.
Yeah, that's when you have the itching head and upset tummy, right?
And I can smell sounds.
Oh, okay. Oh, goodness. How about you, Brittany?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that for sure. But I also think that coffee has such a social benefit for us. I mean, you think about what a coffee shop or cafe has become to a community and how it can really just bring people together. I mean, you do have people who hate coffee, but there's just something about being in that atmosphere that I think is really great.
Couldn't agree with you more for those answers. Perfect.
I'd like to explore Brittany's answer a little bit more, because there is something special about coffee and how it brings people to the same table. Have you seen, we talk about, we have a coffee break, or we have, let's meet up for coffee. Have you seen stories where coffee has played a really key role in breaking down barriers between people?
I mean, I think it definitely does. You think about the types of people that you see in a coffee shop, there's not one coffee drinker. I mean, it brings together all different kinds of people from different backgrounds. It doesn't discriminate, that's for sure. I mean, I think we can agree that there's some issues in the coffee industry, but as a whole, the coffee shop, it's really just a place for a ton of different people to get together. You think about, I've seen recently a lot of these coffee shops doing this like coffee with a cop type deal. And so, you bring in police officers and then people from the community, and everyone gets together and kind of talks about issues that are going on. I think that's a really cool example of how it is really bringing us all together.
Yeah. What about you, Brian? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. I mean, speaking of coffee with a cop, Piecewise actually, right around when we opened back in 2019, a couple months into the shop being open, I think like the first month of 2020 or something, I think we did coffee with a cop. It was either that or it was the summer of 2020. No, we didn't. It wasn't 2020. It had to be some other time in 2019. But we did coffee with a cop, and it was really interesting to see all of the people that came out and like just had a conversation with it. I think it's a neutralizer. Coffee is it's a neutral party. It's not, when you go and meet for coffee, the outcome of it, could be completely different from what, you've originally set out. You could be on a first date at a coffee shop. You could be breaking up with somebody at a coffee shop. It's just kind of something that like, no matter what, it's kind of one of those linchpin like things that it's always going to be there. Like your local coffee shop is like, it's just another part of your routine. You go there because, it's a comfort or, I think that, and then like Piecewise too, it's really funny that we all mentioned that too. It's like Piecewise is, the name derives from a math function, that is like, it groups things together that normally shouldn't be grouped together. So in terms of like numbers and equations, like the Piecewise function groups these numbers together to be able to solve them or to bring them together. And I think that's kind of like when Stan and Lindsay, the owners of the coffee shop, they, when they thought of the name, that's what their goal was, to be a part of the community where people can come together, who maybe not normally wouldn't be together, so.
Thank you for sharing that.
That's amazing. Again, I love the stories behind this idea of something that's grounding, bringing people together. It doesn't discriminate, neutral party. Brings a little bit to what you were saying earlier, Brian, about the name of the coffee having such a symbolism, just like the name of Piecewise has some symbolism to that. And I think that's just fascinating that you have those two connections. What would you both recommend either as your favorite beverage or what you would recommend to a new coffee drinker? Brittany, what would you serve up?
So my favorite drink, I'm just a brewed coffee kind of girl. Like I love just right now I'm drinking a single origin, from Peru. That is a really great coffee that I enjoy. So I drink that pretty much every morning, a couple cups of that. But for somebody who, maybe doesn't drink coffee all the time and may want something a little bit sweeter, I usually recommend like a caramel latte. People tend to like that. And even if you say you don't like coffee, you usually can drink that. Okay.
Very good. How about you, Brian?
I'm honestly the same way. I'm not a fancy coffee drinker. I don't drink, I don't really drink milk all that often either. So I'm not even like if I had my choice every morning, it would be, an African pour over, like anywhere from Africa, Rwanda, Ethiopia, any kind of, lighter roasted, more acidic, light roast from anywhere in the African region. That's kind of like my go-to, or a double espresso or an Americano, something that like, doesn't have a lot of frills and it's cheap. I started drinking black coffee because it was cheap. That's really the only reason.
That's true.
That's hilarious. That's great. Oh, goodness. Well, let's finish out this episode. And I want you to think about some of the answers that you've shared with us and the stories that you've shared with us. What is an essential element that we need to consider as we think about coffee, Bryan?
I think it's important to recognize that coffee isn't going to go anywhere. It's the way that we perceive, the process of it, and like it makes you appreciate it more. Kind of like a winery. Like I tell people who are getting into coffee, or they're they ask me for like, hey, if I was to buy a pour over thing, how would I approach that? And I tell a lot of people it's like you approach it like kind of like wine, or going wine tasting or something like that. You can do a coffee tasting, or to make you appreciate the process of like how hard these farmers work to produce something that we drink every single day. Like there's and it's a statistic that every cup of coffee that you drink, about a year's worth of work has gone into it. From the very start, from the growing to the processing to the milling to the brewing and packaging. It's a year's worth of work into that one cup of coffee. So I think that instead of looking at it just like, oh man, don't talk to me before I've had my coffee, just really appreciating the process of it. So
amazing. That's fantastic. How about you, Brittany?
Yeah, kind of along with what you're saying, Bryan. I think recently what I've been trying to do is to educate myself on maybe the not so great past of coffee. I think that there's, a lot that we can do better as coffee drinkers to not only, educate ourselves on where our coffee's coming from, but kind of how it all started and slave labor and all of those sort of things that we don't really like to talk about, but I think is important when you're thinking about this drink that we all love to drink every day.
Awesome. I think the words, this drink that we all love to drink every day, is a great place to put a pin in it right now. Thanks so much, Brittany and Bryan, for being part of this fascinating conversation. And while you wait for part 2, please go to theafterwordpodcast.com and become a subscriber. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and tell your friends about us. And as always, you are welcome at our coffee table.